Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. The first talks between the U.S. and China under Biden kicked off with a bang. Top U.S. diplomats criticized the Chinese Communist Party for its attacks on human rights, with Chinese officials firing back. Will the regime change? The National Intelligence Council releases its declassified report on 2020 foreign election interference. It shows opposing views about China's actions in the election. We look at what the disagreement is about. A top Biden official says they'll use more aggressive messaging to deter migrants. But Republicans and a former ICE chief say it's Biden's immigration policies that are the problem. Russian President Vladimir Putin challenges President Joe Biden to a public debate this week. This, as Biden has harsh words for Putin in a TV interview. We'll hear more about what the two leaders have to say to each other. All that and more on NTD News. The National Intelligence Council publishes its report on foreign interference in the 2020 U.S. elections. It shows the intelligence community is still at odds over whether China interfered in the 2020 election.
The official report concludes that China did not try to interfere with the U.S. election. It says it has high confidence in that judgment, though a minority view in the report contradicts that conclusion. The minority view says China tried to affect candidates' voter preferences and voting processes. It says China's actions meet the definition of election influence. The official report says China didn't care which U.S. candidate was elected. The minority view disagrees, saying China preferred an establishment candidate over Trump. China expert Gordon Chang tells the Epoch Times program American Thought Leaders that China wanted Biden.
Beijing believed it really did have a candidate in this race and worked very hard to unseat President Trump.
Citing one example, he says China created hundreds of thousands of fake social media accounts to influence the election. John Ratcliffe served as the director of national intelligence for Trump. He says China interfered in the 2020 election and that managers at the CIA pressured their analysts to draw a different conclusion. The official declassified report shows the conflicting views.
Top U.S. and Chinese officials clashed in their first in-person meeting under the Biden administration yesterday. The U.S. says it's looking for China to change its behavior if China wants to restore an agreeable relationship.
Top diplomats from the United States and China sparred in a rare extended back-and-forth showdown on public display. Secretary of State Antony Blinken brought up several highly anticipated points on China's threat to democracy and human rights, among others.
Our deep concerns with actions by China, including in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, Taiwan, cyber attacks on the United States, economic coercion toward our allies. Each of these actions threaten the rules-based order that maintains global stability.
Blinken said the alternative to a rules-based order is a scenario where might makes right and winners take all. And he said that would be a far more violent and unstable world for everyone. The night before the meeting, Beijing set its tone, saying the U.S. is basically delusional if it thinks the Chinese Communist Party will compromise. Chinese top diplomat Yang Jiechi fired back, accusing the U.S. of treating its minorities poorly, saying its democracy is struggling and criticizing its foreign trade policies. Yang also referenced Biden's phone call with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, in which the leader of the free world said the two of them need not have a conflict. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the U.S. does not want conflict with China, but it will stand up for its friends and principles.
We'll make clear today that our overriding priority on the United States' side is to ensure that our approach in the world and our approach to China benefits the American people and protects the interests of our allies and partners. We do not seek conflict, but we welcome stiff competition.
Yang propped China up and laid out economic goals.
By the year 2035, China will surely achieve basic modernization, and by the year 2050, China will achieve full modernization.
Sullivan told reporters after the meeting that it seems China basically came to Alaska to put on a show and attract favorable attention to themselves. The two sides appear set to agree on very little during the talks that are expected to continue on Friday.
And it looks like the Biden administration's changing its messaging to migrants heading to the border. A top official says they'll use social media, radio, and NGOs in Central America to urge migrants not to try to come in illegally.
A top U.S. official says the government will be more aggressive in telling migrants not to come to the United States.
The message isn't don't come now, it's don't come in this way, ever. This is not the way to come to the United States. The way to come to the United States is through legal pathways.
The Biden administration is wrestling with a growing humanitarian crisis at the southern border. At first, Biden officials said migrants shouldn't come now but could come later. But their message has become stricter in recent days amid criticism.
We're going to be more aggressive, more agile about getting our message out. We're going to try and combat the smugglers' messages and make sure that people understand the truth.
On his first day in office, President Biden signed executive orders to stop construction of the border wall and suspend deportations. New guidelines also prevent ICE agents from apprehending a large proportion of illegal aliens, unless they get permission first. Former ICE Chief Tom Homan told the Epoch Times, "What Joe Biden and this administration has done is made our whole nation a sanctuary city. The administration is turning immigration law enforcement on its head." Last month, border authorities caught over 100,000 illegal aliens at the border. That's a 28% increase compared to January. And two categories increased over 100%, family units and unaccompanied minors. Texas Governor Greg Abbott warned Wednesday that the numbers will continue to surge. He told Fox News, "This is just the very beginning of what's going to be a massive expansion of the number of people coming across the border. It will grow tenfold and 100-fold, especially because of the way the Biden administration has handled this." But Biden officials are pushing back. The Homeland Security Secretary said, "The border is secure and the border is not open." Republicans have repeatedly criticized the Biden administration for its immigration policies.
The National Sheriff's Association is calling on the Biden administration to secure the border and protect Americans. And the White House accidentally refers to the border situation as a crisis. This as reporters complain about a lack of transparency on the border.
Press Secretary Jen Psaki accidentally referred to the border situation as a crisis today. This is while talking about diplomatic negotiations between Mexico and the U.S.
That they would be partners in dealing with the crisis on the border.
The administration has carefully avoided using this term. When asked about it, Psaki corrected it to challenges on the border and said there's been no official change in terminology. And the National Sheriff's Association is warning of a serious potential public health crisis along the border. The association says up to 50% of illegal immigrants crossing the border are testing positive for the virus, and that they're already seeing strains on the public health system in border communities. The association said between 5 and 50% are testing positive. They didn't include how they got those numbers nor provide dates. NTD reached out for answers, but they didn't get back to us before airtime. Now, getting clear answers about what exactly is happening at the border has been an ongoing challenge for journalists across the country. NBC News reports said the Biden administration is restricting the information Border Patrol agents can share with the media. The news outlet spoke to several current and former Customs and Border Protection officials. Border Patrol agents are reportedly calling it an unofficial gag order. An Epoch Times reporter told NTD she's been trying to get an interview with Border Patrol for weeks now, with no success. She was told by CBP that they're not doing border ride-alongs and that all interview requests have to go through the head office in D.C. Here's two reporters on Wednesday pressing the White House on the same issue.
We're hearing from border agents that they're frustrated that they can't show us what's actually happening along the border. They can't do ride-alongs. They can't answer questions about what's happening inside. It certainly seems like there's an element of secrecy here. Why?
Our reporters used to be able to get ride-alongs during the Trump administration, and you all, oversee the Department of Homeland Security. So if you all wanted to grant access to the press, couldn't you just tell DHS to do it?
Psaki avoided answering directly and said it's because of the pandemic. However, some ride-along tours were allowed during the pandemic under the Trump administration. A number of White House reporters have expressed concerns about not being able to see inside the facilities for unaccompanied migrant youths, which are reportedly overrun.
Lawyers who've been authorized to inspect the facilities recently told the Associated Press they interviewed children who reported being held in packed conditions, with some sleeping on the floor and others not able to shower for 5 days. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
New videos emerge after multiple tornadoes rip through Alabama. The footage shows conditions during the storm and some of the damage left in the aftermath. Early reports say 18 tornadoes spun through Alabama. It's part of a string of tornadoes that affected 5 states. Authorities are still gathering evidence on the exact number of tornadoes. A video shared by Tyler Fowler shows a crack of thunder and lightning illuminating the night sky in Fairhope. Other footage shows University of Alabama students gathering in the storm shelter on Wednesday. And aerial footage shows extensive damage in Chilton County. As of Thursday morning, the Storm Prediction Center in Oklahoma fielded 152 reports of severe weather in the southeast region. The White House shut down Russian President Vladimir Putin's invitation to President Joe Biden for a live chat, which came after the president agreed with the claim that Putin was a killer in an earlier interview. President Biden says that Russian President Vladimir Putin is a killer. His comment came in an interview with ABC. Russia pulled its top diplomat from the U.S. after Biden's comments. A Russian spokesman says Biden doesn't want to fix U.S. relations with Russia. In the same interview, Biden says Putin doesn't have a soul and threatens Russia with sanctions for allegedly interfering in the 2020 U.S. election. Putin responds by challenging Biden to a public debate.
I want to invite Biden to continue this discussion, but on condition that we do it live, online, without any delay, in an open, direct discussion.
He says he is willing to discuss important issues between the countries in public.
We could talk about bilateral relations, strategic stability, solving regional conflicts. There are many of them, and about other problems that humanity faces today.
He says it would be interesting for Americans and Russians. Putin also accused Biden of seeing himself in the mirror when he claimed that Putin is a killer. Relations are deteriorating between the two countries. The U.S. criticizes Russia for cracking down on political opponents. Russia jailed Alexei Navalny and other political opponents of Putin this year. Biden's press secretary says he does not regret his comments.
The president is not going to hold back, clearly, when he has concerns, when he has, whether it is with words or actions.
Biden was asked what consequences Russia will face. He said, quote, "You'll see shortly." Some lawmakers want cameras in the highest court in the country. So 2 senators have introduced the Cameras in the Courtroom Act. The bill would allow television cameras at Supreme Court hearings, which are already open to the public. Under the proposal, the 9 justices could decide to remove the cameras with a majority vote if they violate due process rights. The Supreme Court added live audio streaming of its oral arguments during the pandemic, but they have not said if that would continue once they start in-person proceedings again. General Flynn traveled to Tulsa, where he endorsed Jackson Lohmeyer for the United States Senate. After the endorsement, Flynn joined a town hall where audience members voiced some of their greatest concerns facing our nation. NTD's Steve Lance brings us more from Oklahoma.
General Michael Flynn traveled to Tulsa, Oklahoma on Tuesday to announce his backing for Republican candidate for the United States Senate, Jackson Lohmeyer. Lohmeyer is a challenger in the 2022 Republican primary. Flynn and Lohmeyer held a joint town hall meeting with citizens of Oklahoma to hear what was on the minds of voters.
With H.R. 1, I'm amazed at how many people have no idea what H.R. 1 is. I'm absolutely shocked. If H.R. 1 passes, do we have any recourse? I mean, as far as I know, that will change our voting all the way around.
H.R. 1 has already passed in the House, and the Senate Rules Committee is set to hold a hearing on the bill on March 24th. General Flynn warned people who may not understand the inner workings of the bill.
There's some really pay attention to this, because there's some crazy stuff in there about voting on election day without registering and illegals being able to vote. And I mean, just incredible some of the stuff that is in there. It's really, it's so unconstitutional.
Other citizens voiced their concerns about social media censorship.
Because that's my biggest fear. We get people following us and we're advocating and we're getting our voices heard, and then we're silenced. So any recommendations you could have about platforms, anything like that, I'd really appreciate it.
Organizer and host of the event, Clay Clark, had some advice for the audience.
But I encourage you, Rumble is great, and Telegram right now. And then if you're using T-Mobile, you have to switch numbers every once in a while. So if I text you, I'm like, hey, here's my new number, Aaron. It's because they've been restricting me over time. Turns out CCP is involved in T-Mobile.
Clark says he's hosting another event in mid-April that General Flynn will be joining along with attorney Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood to discuss issues that matter most to Americans. Steve Lance, NTD News.
Iowa's House of Representatives approves a new measure to allow residents to purchase and carry firearms without a permit. The measure is now off to the state Senate for consideration. Currently, Iowa residents must get a permit to buy a handgun, even if the sale is private. Under the proposal, there would be no permit requirement, but people would still have to go through a background check, though they'd have the option of getting a permit to avoid the background check. Those pushing stricter gun laws say it would put communities in danger, while gun advocates say the bill affirms Second Amendment rights. The bill's sponsor says it strengthens requirements that keep guns out of the wrong hands. And up next, shootings and murders in New York City have surged compared to recent years. We look into a possible reason why. And California's homelessness issue is bringing on a new challenge. Residents from Venice Beach raise concerns that their storm drainage system could become a serious source of pollution as floodwater sends waste from the homeless encampment into the ocean. Find out more on NTD News. Dramatic body cam footage shows officers rescuing a fleeing DUI suspect from a burning wreckage in Vineyard, Utah. Officers caught up with him after his car dropped around 20 feet off a bridge. The footage shows an officer running to the accident scene where a heavily damaged SUV burns at the bottom of an overpass. The man is identified as Dustin Scott Butterfield. He's heard shouting, "I'm on fire," before officers managed to pull him out of the car and away from the wreckage. A local news website says Butterfield was charged with felony evading, DUI, failure to stop for a school bus, and running a red light. But because of his injuries, he was not put in jail. Butterfield was given a summons for a later court date. Shootings and murders in NYC are higher now than in recent years. The city's police unions say that's because of a law change that makes it difficult to set bail on criminals. NTD's Arian Pastar has the story.
In early 2020, the bail reform took effect in New York City. Because of that, many who are arrested for gun possession are being released ahead of their court trial. Now, ever since the reform took place, the number of shootings has sharply increased, and many say that change of law is responsible for that.
Since bail reform took effect in January of 2020, over 2,000 people have been shot in New York City, and there have been over 500 murders.
Murders and shootings in general both went up by roughly 50% from 2019 to 2020 in New York City. But some said it was clear that would happen if the bail reform was put into effect.
Our cops on the street corners warned us that it was happening. We warned the politician that this won't work, violence will rise, and it has.
Following the death of George Floyd, Governor Cuomo announced that police departments across the state have to come up with a police reform plan to minimize tensions between citizens and officers. Each locality must create a plan by April 1st, or else they'll lose state funding.
Tomorrow they'll stand in the chambers of the city council and talk about how police officers are a problem and we need more reform. We don't need more reform, we need help.
He added that the governor's desired reform aims for justice, and so does the police, but according to him, the current reforms are the wrong way to go about it. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
A traffic stop in Indiana this week led to much bigger penalties than a standard traffic ticket. After pulling over this van in Lake County Tuesday, troopers found this, boxes and boxes of marijuana. The van was carrying more than 1,200 pounds of it. The street value, as much as $8.5 million. The driver, 31-year-old Christopher Colburn of McKinleyville, California, was arrested. He now faces felony charges. Southern California is famous for its gorgeous coastline, But some folks in Venice Beach are warning visitors and surfers not to go in the water. They say a homeless camp is causing a sanitation crisis. NTD's Jamie Joseph has more.
Most of us who live here or have lived here for a while, we understand how dangerous the water is, especially after a rainstorm.
Brian is a resident here in Venice Beach, Los Angeles. He says the extensive homeless encampments in the neighborhood is a burden on the city's sanitation department. Around the outlet of the storm drainage system, there are trash and needles. They collect with the rainwater from the city and ultimately lead into the ocean.
And you'll see people barefoot walking through it. And if they have a cut, guess what? Okay, so this is like third world conditions. And you can also see the signage here is very poor. And if you're over here, you're not going to see it.
Rick Swinger is another resident and environmental activist from the area. He worries that besides trash, there could be more hazards in the water, especially human waste, heavy metals, and bacteria.
What are they doing? Well, they're going out like this and right in the gutters. And guess where the gutters is flowing? It's flowing right here.
Even though the city has set up many porta potties, most of the homeless struggle with mental illnesses, which prevents them from using them. Instead, they will defecate on the sidewalks and on residential properties. Rick said when it rains, most of the waste goes into the drainage system.
72 hours ago, it rained in Venice Beach, but when it rains, it pours. Trash, needles, and human feces from the homeless encampments slide into the storm drain, creating a runoff leading into the ocean. Residents here are worried for the health and safety of beachgoers as well as the ocean's wildlife, so they're calling on the City of LA to address the issue.
And so what we're asking for is testing in this ponding area and in the sand. We know that the city and county already test for levels of E. coli in the water, and they have found high levels there, but no one has ever tested this area.
Soledad is a member of the Neighborhood Council, a non-government community organization. She said due to the pandemic, the city has stopped weekly street sweeping and cleaning. She said all they can do now is to avoid the water. The Neighborhood Council passed a motion calling for the City of LA to restore weekly street cleaning and to test the storm drain for levels of E. coli. In response, Los Angeles County Public Works told NTD there's always naturally occurring E. coli that can be found in an outflow like the Venice Beach storm drain. Jamie Joseph, NTD News, Los Angeles.
The space rocket set to take Americans back to the moon passed a big test on Thursday. NASA conducted the final hot fire ground test of its SLS rocket at the Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. Officials say the rocket burned for 8 minutes and passed with flying colors. SLS is the backbone of NASA's Artemis program, which aims to return U.S. astronauts to the moon in 2024. This time around, NASA says the moon landings will include female astronauts. The first UN-crewed Artemis mission is scheduled for this November. NASA also plans to rely on the SLS rocket for a flight to Mars further down the line. And just ahead, the Chinese Communist regime holds a trial for a Canadian businessman who the regime accuses of spying. Some are questioning the timing of the trial and its possible ulterior motives. Apple is terminating its contract with one of its Chinese suppliers. The dropped company is accused of involvement in human rights violations. Find out more after the break.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever. Just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
Canadian Michael Spavor went on trial Friday in the Chinese city of Dandong on espionage charges. He was arrested along with a fellow Canadian and former diplomat more than 2 years ago. It's seen as part of a wider spat between China as well as the U.S. and Canada.
A Chinese court held its first trial of a Canadian citizen charged with espionage on Friday, but it was the timing that raised a few eyebrows. The trial of businessman Michael Spavor was held in Dandong, across the border from North Korea, where he regularly went for work. Spavor was one of what the Canadian press has called the two Michaels. Both are Canadians arrested by Beijing more than 2 years ago. That happened not long after police in Vancouver detained Meng Wanzhou, the CFO of Chinese telecoms giant Huawei, on a U.S. warrant. Beijing has denied that the arrests of the two Canadians were in retaliation. Canadian officials said they were denied access to Friday's trial on national security grounds. Jim Nicol, the deputy head of the Canadian embassy in Beijing, expressed his disappointment.
There is an obligation on the Chinese authorities' part to admit consular officials to attend hearings of our citizens. So we are disappointed in the lack of access and the lack of transparency.
Hours after the trial ended, Beijing said it would set a later date for a verdict. China has a conviction rate of over 99%. Meng Wanzhou remains on house arrest in Vancouver as she fights extradition to the United States. While Beijing has denied a link, Spavor's trial coincides with the first ever talks between Beijing and Washington since President Joe Biden took office. A former Canadian ambassador said Beijing has its eye on Meng's release. Some observers have said convictions of both men could facilitate a diplomatic agreement in which the pair are released and sent back to Canada. The other arrested Canadian, former diplomat Michael Kovrig, is set to appear in court on Monday.
Apple is cutting ties with one of its Chinese component suppliers. It has to do with human rights abuses against Uyghur Muslim minorities in China. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on that.
Apple has reportedly cut ties with its Chinese supplier Ofilm Group. The component supplier is accused of helping the CCP transfer ethnic minorities out of China's Xinjiang region to work elsewhere. BBC reported that the CCP's transfer of minorities is for the purpose of, quote, thinning out of their population. It's by transferring hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in Xinjiang far from their homes. An insider told Bloomberg that Apple is believed to have ended its contracts with Ofilm over these concerns a few months ago. According to reports, Ofilm stocks tumbled by 10%, and it closed at the lowest level since August of 2019. Chinese tech giants are reportedly trying to bypass Apple's upcoming privacy rule. The aim is to continue tracking users without their consent. In the coming weeks, Apple is expected to update its iPhones. The company says this will give users more privacy. Companies and app developers will soon have to ask users for permission before they can gather online tracking data. This data is used to serve users targeted ads. In response, the regime-backed China Advertising Association launched a tool that evades the privacy measures. Chinese tech giants like WeChat's developer Tencent and TikTok's developer ByteDance, among others, are already testing the tool. That way, they can continue tracking online activity without users' consent. That's because most users are expected to not give permission to online tracking. According to the Financial Times, the new privacy rules are expected to deal a multi-billion-dollar blow to the online advertising industry. That includes China's advertising market. Apple released a statement saying, quote, "We believe strongly that users should be asked for their permission before being tracked. The App Store terms and guidelines apply equally to all developers around the world." The Financial Times did not say whether non-Chinese app developers are looking to bypass the security measures. For the first time in 30 years, the EU is putting new sanctions against Communist China. This is in response to the regime's human rights abuses. Countries' ambassadors to the EU agreed to ban 4 Chinese officials from entering the EU and to freeze their assets. A Chinese entity is also sanctioned, but their names are not yet public. EU foreign ministers will have to formally approve it on Monday. The move signifies a hardening stance on the communist regime. It's the EU's first sanctions against Beijing since the arms embargo following the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. Communist China's envoy to the EU responded, saying that Beijing will not change its policies in face of the sanctions. The sanctioned officials are accused of human rights abuses against the Uyghur Muslim minority. UN experts say at least 1 million Uyghurs are being detained in camps inside communist China. Victims report systematic torture, forced labor, and forced sterilizations. Some countries, including the US and Canada, have labeled the abuses as genocide.
Aircraft mechanic Don Yip is one of many thousands leaving Hong Kong after the imposition of a draconian security law last year and 2019's pro-democracy protests. Unlike many others, he won't leave without his pets.
After China's new national security law to quell unrest and tighten control over Hong Kong, 40-year-old Don Yip decided it was time to leave, but not without his pets.
These pets are really a part of my family. I'm also emotionally attached to them. After raising them for so many years, I can't abandon them.
Yip made plans to settle in the UK after a new visa scheme for those with British national overseas passports. As part of that, Yip has spent over $14,000 getting ready to relocate his 3 fluffy huskies and cat, including transportation, vaccinations, and processing medical documents. For help, he hired a pet relocation service called Life Travel. Diana Chan is the company's founder. She says her business surged in 2019 when Hong Kong faced months of protests.
From 2017 to 2019, our business of transporting pets increased threefold. We expected it to increase because there was the social unrest.
Official numbers show a 35% increase in animal export certificates from 2018 to 2020. Animal welfare group the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals also said demand for pet microchips is now 4 times what it once was. Countries like the UK and Australia require them for pets coming in. Jane Gray is with the SPCA's local chapter.
Of course, it will be stressful, but the way I look at it as well, it's a short-term stressful event for maybe 24 hours when you're talking about the rest of an animal's life.
Last month, Yip, his girlfriend, and her daughter prepared their 4 pets to make the long journey. They carefully sealed them into kennels and said goodbye before reuniting again in the UK.
And still to come, the Auto Workers Union is outraged over plans Ford supposedly has to move an Ohio car plant to Mexico. The union says they are ready to take action. Find out more on NTD News. A labor union is very upset at Ford for plans to move some production that was planned for Ohio to Mexico. Ford didn't confirm the news when we asked, but the union says it's ready to take action. Here's our latest financial and business news on jobs and the economy.
The United Auto Workers Union is criticizing Ford over its plans for a car factory in Ohio. UAW Vice President Gerald Kareem says in 2019, Ford committed $900 million for the plant and would start building a new model there in 2023. But he says recently Ford told the union it's moving the new model production to Mexico and didn't give a good reason. Kareem blasted Ford for not honoring its promise. He says if Ford fails to meet its commitments, the union will take action. Ohio plant manager Jason Moore sent a letter to the workers. He said conditions have changed since 2019. The firm is investing in the plant and will increase Super Duty truck production there. Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown, a vocal advocate of labor and labor unions, also criticized Ford's decision.
Ohioans are tired of watching corporation after corporation abandon the workers and communities that have made their businesses successful.
We reached out to Ford for comment. A Ford spokesperson didn't respond to the plan to move production to Mexico. Instead, Ford says it invests in America more than any other automaker. And since 2019, it has invested more than $185 million at the Ohio plant, as well as created and retained more than 100 jobs there, including actions planned for this year. General Motors in 2019 stopped production of the Chevy Cruze at a Lordstown, Ohio factory. It impacted hundreds of jobs in the area. President Biden, whom the UAW endorsed, has reportedly sought to focus on American car manufacturing as part of his plan to create new car industry jobs. Sapphire Quarter, NTD News.
Green policies are making the electric vehicle space a hot market. And naturally, Volkswagen CEO wants to overtake Tesla. The German automaker is ramping up battery production, but soaring lithium prices amid low supply could slow down their plans. NTD's Phil Zoe reports.
Volkswagen CEO says he wants to get close and then overtake Tesla. The German automaker is going full speed ahead with electric vehicles to do it.
We are once again stepping up the pace of our electrification offensive and pursuing our ambitions. By 2030, our electric vehicles will account for at least 70% of our sales in Europe and 50% of our sales in North America and China.
And they're going at it without Tesla's help.
Battery cell competence, we believe, is something that we need to also grow within the company. We do not necessarily need to partner up with other car makers to collaborate.
But electric vehicles are hampered by a shortage of lithium, a crucial battery component. One lithium producer says this improves the overall investment environment.
One of the key factors in the increase in lithium and spodumene prices really has been the fact that most lithium raw material supply is tied up in long-term contracts.
There'll be problems with getting enough lithium for major electrification efforts all over the world. Mining new sources is no simple matter.
It is concerning. The average time between discovering a lithium deposit and being able to bring it into production is somewhere around 8 to 12 years. So you just can't really whistle up new production of lithium overnight.
On the other hand, limited lithium supply forces innovation.
Higher efficiency means you can have fewer battery cells and a smaller overall pack capacity and still have the range to go just as far. Efficiency right now is the key metric. How much range can you get out of each kilowatt hour of battery cell that you have?
There are currently no easy alternatives for lithium.
A lot of work going on in solid state batteries. There's a lot of work going on in low lithium type research, but it's a long time to get from the lab into production.
China is by far the largest electric vehicle market, with the EU being comparable if taken as a single bloc. The US is a distant third. Phil Zoe, NTD News.
This is an expensive reminder not to judge a book by its cover, or in this case, a bowl. This little bowl just sold for $721,000 at an auction. The owner who sold it paid just $35 for it at a yard sale in Connecticut last year. It turns out the blue and white floral bowl is a rare 15th century Chinese antique. China's imperial court originally commissioned it during the Ming Dynasty. Sotheby's sold the bowl for more than its top estimated sale price, which was $500,000. The auction house is not disclosing the seller's identity. Coming up, countries around the world are working to vaccinate the elderly, but in Colombia, a woman and her father report a troubling irregularity after her father wasn't properly inoculated. And the live theater industry has been hit hard by the pandemic. In Italy, actors are performing on demand in places like parks. Stay tuned to find out more.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical, so I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies, or call 1-800-509-8500. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
It's just clear as day. The media, whether it's broadcast, cable, or print media, has become extremely biased. And I started looking online for alternative ways to get information. And I saw an ad for a free trial. And I looked at it and I said, Epoch Times. I mean, come on, this is end of days type of stuff. I mean, what are they going to be talking about here? And I said, well, it's a free trial. Let me dig in. Is it giving me both sides? Is it giving me an objective point of view here? I have looked for opportunities to see where they might be biased, and I don't find it. It has given me a level of trust in media that I didn't think I'd ever get back. I love the Epoch Times because it has renewed my faith in the idea that a reliable, responsible, non-biased source of information is available. And I can say that I love it because of that.
Governments worldwide are rushing to vaccinate their citizens, especially the elderly. But some irregularities have surfaced in Colombia and are raising suspicions. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
A nurse injected an elderly man with an empty syringe at a Colombian vaccine clinic this week. The incident is just one of several cases to be reported in the country. 82-year-old Artemio Chavarro traveled to get his shot at the clinic on Monday. His daughter Nora Chavarro went with him and filmed the long-awaited moment with her phone. When reviewing the footage, Chavarro noticed the nurse had pricked her father with an empty syringe.
I did not realize at the time the nurse had not injected the liquid from the syringe. I did not see that she actually got the liquid from the vial. She walked towards us with a syringe, towards my dad's arm, and when she was about to jab the arm, she gave me the documents, but I was recording.
When Nora challenged her, the nurse said she would inject the elderly man again with a full syringe. The nurse gave no other explanation as to what had happened. Artemio did get properly vaccinated, but his daughter was still concerned after the incident.
I left happy because they had already vaccinated my father, which was the most important thing at the time. So I left happy and confident, but later they made me doubt. And then right now, I'm worried, distrustful.
Luis Felipe Terrasona, Santander's Undersecretary of Health, has blamed similar events on human error. Andrew Thomas, NTD News. The UK and Italy recently enacted new lockdown measures, and now France is following their example. Starting this weekend, the restrictions will impact 21 million people. NTD's David Vives has the story.
The French Prime Minister says a third wave of infections is hitting his country. On Thursday, he announced new lockdown measures for 16 regions across France, including Paris. For 1 month, all shops except those selling essential items will be closed, and traveling from one region to another will be banned.
Infections from the virus have been accelerating for 15 days. Pressure on hospitals has been increasing for a week. The time has come to face the consequences.
The Prime Minister says one reason for the increase in the number of cases is the UK variant. He claims it contaminates more people and is more dangerous. He says the UK and Italy are facing similar situations, so he decided to follow their lead and enact new lockdown restrictions. The new lockdown comes as a blow for certain people, such as small shop owners or students that are forced to stay home for months. It remains to be seen whether this measure will be followed and accepted by the public. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Easter's coming soon, and some Germans are planning on taking a vacation. But their choice of destination is making some unhappy. Take a look.
Tens of thousands of Germans are planning last-minute Easter getaways to Spain's sun-kissed islands. But Spaniards themselves can't because of a travel ban. That's not going down too well.
In Spain, we can't move between regions because of the lockdown, but foreigners can arrive at Barajas airport and spread infection. It seems like foreigners don't infect, but Madrid residents and the rest of the Spaniards have to stay home.
Those foreigners do need a negative test result to fly in. But given that countries like France and Germany currently have high infection rates, top health official Fernando Simon described the situation as incongruous. Lufthansa's discount carrier Eurowings has set up 300 extra flights to Mallorca over Easter. And while Berlin has removed parts of Spain, including Mallorca, from its coronavirus risk list, hotels in Germany itself are closed. The contradictions aren't lost on some German tourists either, even ones about to hop on a flight to Mallorca.
From the Spaniards' point of view, I can totally understand it. Quite honestly, traveling during times of coronavirus is a privilege, and so I have to admit, overall, it's rather irresponsible.
Despite widespread grumbling, the return of sun-seeking Germans will provide a welcome shot in the arm to the ailing tourism industry. Foreign visitors to Spain fell 80% to 19 million in 2020, the lowest level since 1969.
Dogs may have enjoyed having their owners at home more, but as lockdowns begin to ease and people return to work, these pooches are showing some behavioral issues. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Meet Oreo. He loves to jump over this huge log in his local park in London. He's been spending a lot of time with his owner, Denai Sonatanu. Sonatanu found Oreo abandoned as a puppy and has worked hard to calm and train him since then. She ultimately earned a professional qualification from the Institute of Modern Dog Trainers and set up her own dog training business called The Dog Made Me Do It. Sonatanu says 12 months after restrictions first began in the UK, many pandemic pooches have started demonstrating behavioral issues.
Separation anxiety is a big one. Dogs follow their owners around even when the owners go to the next room. They cannot even be left alone when their owners go grocery shopping.
Dog behavior has even become an issue for the country's Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. His dog, Dylan, was recently in trouble for reportedly chewing expensive books and furniture at his country retreat in Buckinghamshire, Chequers.
They don't come with a manual and they don't come pre-programmed, unfortunately. But that's the fun of owning a dog, to be honest.
According to Battersea Dogs and Cats, almost half of new pet owners said they sometimes regret their decision. 73% said their misgivings were due to training problems. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Actors in Italy are embracing a new kind of performance stage. With many theaters still closed by pandemic restrictions, these performers are bringing their shows straight to local parks and even to your door. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Actress Michela Cesaretti Salvi has been riding her scooter and delivering plays to courtyards and parks since January. She's even designed menus for different performances. People can choose a show, and in some cases even make specific personal requests.
I took part in the project both because I strongly believe in the value of this initiative and because I really wanted to continue telling stories, and also because I believe it is important to do it at this specific moment. Somehow I feel like doing a public service.
This initiative is part of a bigger project that involves theater actors from all over Italy. The performers deliver theatrical plays across Italy by bicycle or scooter after receiving a booking. It's a temporary solution to help them make a living during the pandemic. It's been just over a year since the first known virus case was found in Italy on February 21st. Since then, the entertainment sector has been suffering from a total shutdown, except for a brief reopening during the summer.
We are buried by several news stories that have a big impact on people's mood, and the long duration of this emergency is something difficult to handle at all levels. Health is made of different things. There is also the spirit. So to find a contact with a theatrical, poetical, and musical dimension, it is fundamental even to cope with all of this.
While museums were allowed to reopen their doors to the public at different times during the pandemic, theater curtains remained down. According to the Italian Agency for Authors and Editors, the entertainment sector has lost nearly 70% of events since shutdowns began. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And coming up, the Summer Olympics are around the corner. Swimmers have had to come up with creative ways to train while their pools were closed due to the pandemic. But will they still be at their peak performance? And Benedict Cumberbatch stars in a Cold War spy thriller, The Courier. The movie is based on a true story. The star actor talks about what attracted him to the role. That and more on NTD News. We can expect swimmers at Tokyo's Olympic Games this summer to be fast when they compete this July. That's according to a 5-time Olympic champion. She says there's no need to worry the athletes will give subpar performances even though their training pools were shut down due to the virus. Katie Ledecky has won 5 gold medals in the Olympics for Team USA. She doesn't think the pandemic is going to slow swimmers down at the Summer Games. That's after Michael Phelps claims swimmers won't be able to break any world records this year because the pandemic has thrown off the training. Here's what Ledecky has to say about that.
I wouldn't dare make a claim. I think there has been a lot of fast swimming still during this time, and as we've gotten closer and closer, and I think you'll see at least a couple. I think there is definitely that potential.
The CCP virus has claimed the lives of over 500,000 Americans, and it has caused the training pools swimmers use to be shut down to control the spread. This hampered many athletes' training, including 23-year-old Ledecky's. Nevertheless, Ledecky says she's feeling good about it.
Just personally, I feel like I'm in a really good spot with my training right now. I feel like I was able to build off of the momentum that I had last year leading into trials at this point, leading into Olympic trials, and feeling the same way I felt in February of last year of how my preparation is going.
The pandemic pushed the Olympics back a whole year. During the delay, Ledecky had to be resourceful in her training regimen. She practiced her dive start on her balcony, and it changed other aspects of her training as well.
It really changed the first couple months. I wasn't able to train in my normal training facilities, and so I swam in a backyard pool in the Bay Area for a couple months and did all my weights training in my apartment. I just pulled together as much equipment as I could and did my workouts from home.
Now she's back to her normal swim routine, preparing for her face-off with her rivals whose recent results show haven't slowed down. An ordinary businessman turns Cold War spy in a new film based on a true story.
This is unexpected. I can't believe I'm actually having lunch with spies. I'm just a salesman.
Exactly. You're civilians the KGB won't be watching.
It would be a real service to Great Britain.
What do you want me to do?
The Courier follows spy Greville Wynn's mission during the Cold War.
From now on, you will be selling one thing. The idea that you are an ordinary businessman and nothing more than an ordinary businessman.
Wynn's naivete attracted star Benedict Cumberbatch to the project.
What drew me in was the everyman nature of him, the fact that this guy had absolutely no experience of what he was getting embroiled in.
Would I be putting myself in danger?
If this mission was the least bit dangerous, you really are the last man we'd send.
Cumberbatch lost considerable weight for the role.
He was just so completely transformed, but it definitely added something, I think, and we could feel it when we were shooting it. And it honoured actually what this guy went through.
The journey was worth telling Wynn's story.
It's a completely untold story, really, which is one of the joys of doing the film, because you sort of feel like these guys should be known about.
Kind of inspiring story to see an ordinary guy doing an extraordinary thing.
I'm volunteering to bring back the best source of Soviet intelligence you've got at a time where Russia and America are on the brink of nuclear war. You talk about using people. For God's sake, use me. But this is how things change.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.